At 75 years old, Victoria Principal finally gathered the courage to whisper a truth she had carried alone for more than 2 decades. A truth buried beneath diamonds, designer gowns, and a marriage the world once believed was perfect. Her voice, calm yet trembling with years of unspoken pain, opened with a confession. There were many things I succeeded at, but long-term relationships were never one of them. And maybe it was never meant to be my destiny. For years, Hollywood had only been shown a polished half story. The other half, cold, heavy, and wrapped in lies, was hidden behind the elegant smile of a woman America once adored. Victoria Principal, the mesmerizing star of Dallas, now revealed that her marriage, the fairy tale everyone envied, was nothing more than a stage. A stage built not on love, but on illusion. They once called him the ideal husband, handsome, accomplished, respected. But in her newest interview, Victoria finally admitted the wound she had protected for so long. He never truly loved a woman. Rumors of infidelity, whispers of control, secrets quietly buried under millions of dollars. Those were only the surface cracks. Beneath them was something far darker, a hidden story of power, pride, and a woman forced into silence because speaking the truth would destroy everything Hollywood wanted to believe. Now, in her twilight years, Victoria no longer hides. She doesn't speak to attack. She doesn't speak for revenge. She speaks because she is finally free from the last role she ever played, the obedient wife in someone else's scripted life. Tonight, we uncover the hidden truth behind Victoria Principal's seemingly perfect marriage, and the real reason she walked away from the man the world once admired. At 75, Victoria Principal no longer cared about Hollywood gossip, polished headlines, or the false narratives that once shaped her life. She spoke slowly, every word weighed down by years of silent endurance. I stayed quiet for far too long, she said softly, not because I was afraid, but because some truths are so heavy that even your own heart refuses to carry them into the light. Then, for the first time, she opened the door to the marriage that lasted more than 2 decades. A marriage she described as the hardest role I ever played because it was the only one without a script. Back in 1985, when Victoria married Dr. Harry Glassman, Hollywood applauded. The perfect pair, the tabloids wrote. She was the elegant star who had just left Dallas, a symbol of strength and mystique. He was the respected Beverly Hills surgeon trusted by A-list celebrities, politicians, and executives. To the world, they were a fairy tale carved in gold. But behind closed doors, the fairy tale ended almost immediately. By their second year of marriage, Victoria sensed something was wrong, something cold, distant, and painfully unfamiliar. Harry never reached for her, never touched her, never looked at her the way a husband should look at his wife. At first, she told herself stories to ease the ache. He's tired, he's stressed, he's overworked. But the excuses faded with time. The distance only grew, like frost slowly climbing the windows of their home. Everything changed on a quiet night in late 2001. Victoria received an anonymous phone call, a man's voice, calm and emotionless. If you want to know who your husband really is, go to the underground parking lot of the Chateau Marmont. 11 p.m. tonight. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she waited in the shadows of the garage. 40 long minutes passed. At 10:57, a silver BMW arrived. Harry stepped out, but he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a young man, familiar, striking, unmistakable. Brandon Kay. a fitness model who had appeared in fragrance campaigns for a company whose CEO, Harry, worked closely with. Victoria's breath caught in her throat as she watched them step into the hotel elevator. Brandon smiling softly, his hand brushing Harry's waist in a gesture that shattered everything she once believed. "I didn't want to believe what I saw," she whispered years later. "I begged myself to think I misunderstood, because believing the truth would destroy me." The next morning, when she confronted Harry, he dismissed her with a sigh. "He's a patient. I was consulting after hours. You should trust me." She wanted to believe him. She tried, but something inside her broke forever that day. A few weeks later, she met Brandon at his gym. Their conversation lasted only moments. He didn't admit anything. He didn't have to. His calm, knowing look told her everything. That night, Victoria left Harry a handwritten note. "You don't have to love me, but don't use me as a shadow to hide who you are." She expected silence. Instead, Harry retaliated. A week later, tabloids erupted with headlines. "Victoria Principal caught getting too close to male co-star." A blurry photograph of her in a car after a simple script meeting became the weapon he used to bury her in shame. The paparazzi swarmed her home, screaming accusations, and Victoria stood still in the center of the storm, realizing the truth. He built a spectacle to punish her for discovering his secret. Years later, she said only one haunting sentence. "All my life, I was taught that a woman must stay loyal, but no one taught me what to do when the man you marry isn't loyal to himself." That was the moment she understood she wasn't a wife. She was an unwitting accomplice, a living prop in someone else's performance. A performance she could no longer endure. Some truths do not arrive as lightning. They come quietly, slowly, drip by drip, like water falling onto the same crack until it finally splits open. After discovering the truth about Harry Glassman's hidden life, Victoria didn't walk away immediately. Silence had become her habit, hope her oldest weakness, and for a time, she still wished they could salvage at least respect, even if love had long died. But the longer she stayed, the more she realized her marriage was not a partnership. It was a trap woven into a world she never belonged to. Harry Glassman was not simply a surgeon. He was a gatekeeper to a hidden network of favors, whispered deals, and unspoken transactions. A world where beauty, image, and truth could be bought, reshaped, or erased. His clients were not ordinary people. They were high-ranking politicians, CEOs with too much to lose, fading stars desperate to remain young, and powerful figures who needed their mistakes rewritten. At first, Victoria thought Harry's secrecy came from professionalism. But then came the dinners where invitations disappeared. The coded phrases she overheard. "I need a document adjustment." "Handle the lake before morning." "Fix the narrative." And whenever she asked, he responded with the same cold, dismissive line, "That's how Hollywood works. Don't ask." Gradually, she realized the adjustments weren't just on faces. They were on headlines, reputations, and records. Harry didn't just fix noses, he fixed scandals. And Victoria became his accessory, a living ornament used to validate his respectability. "They stopped calling me by my name," she later said. "I became a fashionable accessory, nothing more." Her breaking point came at a secret dinner in Holmby Hills. Phones confiscated, security sweeping the entrance, cameras banned. Victoria overheard Harry laughing with a media mogul, a man known for burying stories with a single phone call. If she threatens to leak the photos, the mogul chuckled, 2 injections and an NDA will keep her quiet. If not, I've got a newsroom ready to paint her as unstable in 3 days. They laughed together, and something inside Victoria froze. That was the moment, she said, when I realized I wasn't standing beside my husband anymore. I was standing inside an empire where morals had no place. She began to withdraw, avoiding parties, avoiding people, avoiding him. Magazines mocked her disappearance, calling her aged, retired, a former star hiding from the spotlight. No one knew she was trying to escape a world built on silence, threats, and manipulation. Then came the final confirmation. The moment the last illusion shattered. She found a file on Harry's desk, a carefully orchestrated media plan to resurrect the career of a disgraced actor accused of misconduct. The strategy was detailed, chilling, and disturbingly precise. 6 months of cosmetic procedures, a staged romance with a famous actress, a victim narrative interview, a charity campaign to clean the headlines, all funded by another client. Victoria stared at the pages in disbelief, whispering only one line to herself. I lived in a world where beauty could be bought, and truth was always for sale. When she finally left, she didn't just leave a man, she walked away from an entire system, a gilded web of wealth, vanity, and silent corruption. The price of her escape was nearly 20 years of being misunderstood, 20 years of tabloids painting her as the betrayer, 20 years of strangers believing she had abandoned a perfect marriage. But as she later said, they can buy headlines, they can buy images, they can even rent a fake life, but the one thing they cannot do is live it for me. This part of her story ended with a night that broke more than glass. It broke her endurance, her silence, and the last pieces of a life she no longer recognized. A marriage can end in silence or it can end in thunder. For Victoria Principal, its final chapter unfolded like a cold war, slow, strategic, and deeply wounding. After the night police lights painted the walls of their Beverly Hills villa, Victoria never returned home as a wife again. Something in her had been extinguished, something that would never return. For the next 3 years, she vanished from Hollywood's glittering surface. No red carpets, no interviews, no public appearances. She slipped quietly into the shadows, focusing only on her skincare brand, the one part of her life Harry had never touched. But silence was not peace. Silence became the room where memories whispered at midnight. Silence carried the echoes of threats he never said aloud, but etched into every conversation. Silence was the invisible fog that followed her everywhere. In 2005, she finally filed for divorce in Los Angeles County Court. The official reason was only 3 words: irreconcilable differences. But in her private journal, she wrote a line only her lawyer would ever read. I'm no longer asking for justice, I'm just asking for a life without lies. Yet Harry, powerful, polished, and accustomed to absolute control, was not ready to let her go. He was a man who had built an empire based on secrets. Secrets preserved in before and after photos, cosmetic invoices, confidential records, and whispered favors, or secrets that aging celebrities and public figures prayed would never see the light. And Victoria, the face of natural beauty, possessed something he feared: credibility. One evening in late May, while she sat reviewing documents in her office, her phone rang. Harry's voice was calm, too calm. We both want this to end well, Vic, he said. But you understand, everything has its price. Victoria's breath became still. "I have a file," he added. "You know what's in it. Photos, receipts, post-op notes. You want your image intact, don't you?" Then came the threat, quiet, subtle, but deadly. "Sign the agreement. Give up your shares in the skincare company. Give up the Santa Barbara house, or the editors at Page 6 may receive an interesting package." She hung up immediately, but her hands trembled for hours, not from fear, but from disgust. The man she once called husband was now using her own reputation as a weapon against her. Days later, tabloids began whispering. Was Victoria Principal's beauty ever real? Anonymous insider reveals Victoria's cosmetic secrets. Insiders later revealed Harry had pitched a book proposal to two major New York publishers, a tell-all expose about Hollywood beauty, with Victoria's name in the opening chapter, yet she said nothing. Instead, she quietly restructured her finances, moved assets into a trust, prepared for a battle she never wanted to fight. During one grueling meeting, a former assistant saw her cry for the first time. Through tears, she whispered, "I lived right, and still he wants to drag me down with him." A leaked draft of the settlement exposed the truth. Victoria agreed to walk away from more than $50 million, including her shares in the skincare company she co-founded, the $12 million Santa Barbara villa. Future profits and licensing rights. The public split in two. Some called her weak. Why give up so much? Others called her courageous, a woman choosing self-respect over fortune. At a skincare event soon after, a reporter asked, "Do you regret losing half your fortune?" Victoria smiled, calm and unwavering. "I'd rather lose money than lose self-respect. Some things can't be bought, like the silence I paid too high a price to keep." The sentence became iconic, printed on magazine covers, quoted in interviews, printed onto T-shirts worn by young actresses who saw her as a quiet revolutionary. Meanwhile, Harry Glassman faded into obscurity. No denials, no clarifications, just silence. A veteran reporter summed it up best. People demand corrections when a story is false. When it's too close to the truth, they stay quiet. On the day she signed the final papers, Victoria told her friend, "Not everyone deserves a share in your story. Some people must stay outside while you close the door." And she did, calmly, finally, without hatred, just a woman stepping out of the last cage she ever lived in. When the last door of her marriage finally closed, Victoria Principal didn't rush to open a new one. She didn't chase revenge. She didn't seek sympathy. She didn't try to reclaim old fame or rewrite her past. Instead, she did something almost no Hollywood woman had ever dared to do. She disappeared, not in defeat, but in liberation. She left behind the manicured chaos of Beverly Hills, the red carpets that once sparkled beneath her heels, the endless galas where everyone pretended to be perfect, the flashes of paparazzi cameras that had followed her for decades. In their place, she chose the stillness. Victoria bought an 80-acre ranch in California, far from the glitter, far from the whispers, far from the world that had tried to define her. There were no velvet ropes here, no scripts, no judges, only open sky, tall grass, the scent of lavender, and the quiet sound of her own breathing. It was on that land that she began planting the ingredients for her skincare line, not as a businesswoman, not as a celebrity, but as a woman relearning how to live in truth. Years later, when a journalist traveled all the way to her ranch, surprised by her complete disappearance, Victoria simply said, "I once lived to be seen. Now I live to understand myself. Rumors filled the void Hollywood left behind. Some claimed she had given up on men forever. Others insisted the wounds of her marriage ran so deep she had closed her heart permanently. Some tabloids even wrote that she no longer believed in love at all. But in a rare 2012 interview, Victoria quietly corrected them. "I didn't give up on men. I just gave up sacrificing myself to keep them." It was the kind of sentence only a woman who had survived a lifetime of illusions could say. Her life transformed, slowly, gently, into something that resembled peace. Not fame, not applause, but a soft, private form of freedom. She wrote books, not scandalous memoirs, not revenge-filled confessions, but guides to self-care, inner beauty, and the quiet art of repairing a wounded heart. Her pages didn't scream her past, they whispered healing, forgiveness, and the grace of solitude. Hollywood tried to lure her back. Producers offered her reality shows, The Real Housewives, nostalgia specials, Dallas reunion features. She turned them all down. "The best memories," she said, "are the ones we choose to keep, not the ones others profit from." For the next 15 years, she lived almost in seclusion. She appeared in public only once or twice a year, always for causes that mattered to her: animal rights, environmental protection, healing the earth rather than feeding Hollywood's appetite for drama. Occasionally, locals photographed her by chance. A silver-haired woman in a simple shirt tending her garden, kneeling beside an old dog, or carrying a bucket of lavender in the golden California sun. She was no longer Victoria Principal, the Hollywood icon. She was simply Victoria, a woman rebuilding her life one quiet morning at a time. In a short conservation video, standing in a field of lavender, she said a line that struck the world. "I once tried to be everyone's ideal. Now I just want to be the calmest version of myself." It was a gentle rebellion, not a war, not a scandal, not a spectacle. Just a woman choosing truth over image, peace over illusion. "I don't need love to exist," she once said. "I need the truth to live." Over time, the world realized that this wasn't a wounded woman's excuse. It was her legacy. For decades, Hollywood tried to shape her, but it was only when she stepped away from it all, when she stood alone, quiet and unapologetic, that she finally became something far greater than a star. She became human. She became whole. She became free. Victoria Principal once stood as one of Hollywood's most mesmerizing faces, a symbol of beauty, strength, and the glamorous world that millions dreamed of. But as her story shows, the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows, and sometimes the most courageous thing a woman can do is step out of those lights entirely. Her journey was never just about a marriage ending. It wasn't simply a scandal or betrayal or the slow erosion of trust. It was the story of a woman who spent half her life being admired and the other half learning how to truly live. Not for Hollywood, not for a husband, not for a reputation, but for herself. In a world that worships perfection, Victoria dared to be authentic. In an industry built on illusion, she chose truth. And in a life where silence had once been a prison, she transformed that silence into peace. Her disappearance from the spotlight was not a retreat. It was a declaration that a woman's worth is not in her beauty, her fame, her marriage, or the narratives written about her, but in the truth she carries within her heart. Victoria Principal may no longer walk red carpets, but she walks something far more powerful, a life she defines on her own terms, And maybe, just maybe, that is what makes her a legend today. Not the perfection she once displayed, but the courage she finally embraced. If Victoria's story touched you, if it reminded you of a strength or resilience or the quiet bravery of choosing yourself, then tap the heart. Share this story with someone who may need to hear it. And follow this channel as we continue to uncover the untold truths behind Hollywood's greatest legends. Those who shined on a screen but lived their real battles in silence. Because in a world where not everyone lives honestly, some stories must finally be told.